What's up, George?
Hi, Carlos.
Welcome to another episode of the MOACA Media Podcast.
Wahahaha.
Yeah, man. How you doing? How you feeling?
We're good. I'm good. I'm really good, dude. It's yeah, we're
Yep.
we're chugging along.
Same here. Same here. Everything's balanced. Everything's good. You know, I'm getting very used to the YouTube thing, so I'm doing a lot of like hand signals with no sound, and I'm like, wait, it's still a podcast. Like, you know, people still need to be able to hear
Primarily,
me.
yeah, and it's
Yes. Yeah, everything's going really well. So
That's
I'm excited
wonderful
for
to hear.
today. I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited for what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of like snug it in. We decided we were gonna do it, and yeah.
Yeah, it was if you haven't been following along with the previous episodes, it's been a very natural sequence of events. We don't need to go over everything that's been going on in the world. You guys know that, but George and I, went through our, processing with everything that's been going on, and it kind of triggered this move of like, hey, why don't we revisit one of the Eckhart Tolle books and kind of get to another balanced place without dismissing anything that's going on in the world, but at the same time being able to get in a balanced place so we can be more effective in all areas of our life. So we're going to do the chapter by chapter. Each episode we'll talk about one chapter of the book A New Earth. If you don't feel like reading it, that's fine, because you could just listen to our podcast. This hasn't been done before by Oprah Winfrey and Eckhart, and we're gonna do the MOACA version of this. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Oprah Eckhart Tolle podcast really shifted my thinking. So I did that, and then I listened to the book. I downloaded the Audible. And so in conjunction, the two pieces together, working back and forth, kind of listening, especially the first chapter, it gets very heady and very, very big picture, which I can see as a barrier to entry. But I stuck with it mostly because I think she's awesome, and I don't remember what I was going through at the time. Maybe it just it was like the right thing at the right time, honestly. Right. And so I like the idea of a guided book club reading, especially on the topic of spirituality, being that I have my own struggles and personal conflicts with religion. This was something that I could find myself being able to be in a space with people who are very religious, like particularly my family. It really helped me. It helped me balance out my relationship that I felt was that I was struggling with my fam. So I'm grateful for that, and what I like about it is that you can always come back to it too. It's never. I mean, I did this a while back, and we're doing it again, and just listening to those concepts for the first, it feels like you're hearing it for the first time, because we don't retain all the information, especially when you're driving in your car or wherever you're hearing us now, for that matter. But yeah, I was really excited about the idea of it, and then when we walked away from our recording session, and the week has come by, and I was just I can't. People will come to learn about the voice in the head. The voice in the head starts saying, George, you're no guru. George, you're like, what can you do to add it to anything that's already been said by the author and, someone like Oprah herself already. But I don't know, maybe the people just don't like them and they like us. So through us, they'll find new information that'll help them out. So I hope that that's what you get from that.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, and because I have had that voice in my head too, many times, even if I'm, whether I'm in session or whether I'm in, talking to a friend of mine, where I start saying things and I'm like, what I'm saying here is not really earth shattering. It's been said before. And what I've learned is that it's really about timing. Like sometimes, you just, we give out the information and it just catches somebody on the right day, on the right time. It's
Yeah.
like I've heard this, the same piece of advice for years, and then one day it just, same piece of advice, but all of a sudden it just caught me in a place where I was ready to receive it and I was owning it. And so that's why, like, I had the voice in my head saying, wait, what do you mean? Like, there's already a podcast that exists. Like, the author was on it. Like, why are we, well, this is, this is just a different avenue, and this is a way that we can share our experience as the MOACA guys, and how how we kind of navigate the of this book, and how we become present. And especially if we go to the origin of this podcast, and it's men of a certain age, and we understand that although we started this podcast based on a targeting of men 35 and over, or 40 and over, and then we realized we had a lot of female listeners, and then we had a lot of younger listeners. So really it's for everyone. But one thing that, if we go back to the origin of this podcast, a lot of and this is a huge generalization, but I have found this to be true, is that out of all the pieces of the pie in the wellness wheel, and the overall, out of all the factors and aspects of well-being, where men struggle with the most is implementing spirituality, especially when it's not targeted to a certain religion. I mean, a lot of people who read the Eckhart Tolle books, they end up becoming, like, for example, they can practice Christianity, but they are more of an open Christian, more of a progressive Christian, more of this is what I choose to believe, but you can choose to believe something else, because we all end up in the same place as long as you follow, or there's something or some channel that you're following.
Yeah, there's a lot of room for people who have found the hierarchy nature of especially the conservative like factions of different religions. I'm particularly like aware of Catholicism, and within Catholicism there are very conservative like branches of it, and it's all about the hierarchy. And it's like, we are the experts. We have been through this. We are like generational scholars and yada, yada, yada. We have all of the truth, and we have all of the this, and we have figured it out. All you have to do is follow this guidebook, and it's the Catholicism. And I don't know. It was a really interesting concept that was brought up. And I missed it the first time. And I guess it's been front and forward in my head because of like a conversation that I had with my parents and my sister recently. Mother's Day and Father's Day has been around, so I've had family in my mind. And my sister just moved to Texas, so we're not all in the same state anymore. So we're even more fragmented now geographically than we were before. Before it was like, get in the car and you could drive up 4 hours and see them. Now it's like you gotta get on a plane. That's the whole thing. Anyhow, but what they said was that was talking about how the concept of something like God, and I hope I don't lose because people here, because we're kind of like diving straight in, but the concept of something like God that is like all seeing, all knowing, all magical, all like amazing, all the energy, all of the power, all of the everything. It is inconceivable in the human brain to understand the magnitude of that concept, right?
Right.
So then it's like, but with that, and so it would make sense that human beings would create a human form of it, right? Like, we've created God in our own image, or God created man in his own image. I don't know what
something like that.
But it's like, it seems like a very egoic thing to do, right?
Yeah,
like
that.
Okay, let's decide what's gonna be like, and okay, then I don't. It's funny. I asked David yesterday about Judaism and about the soul, because something about this. Oh, it was he made a funny comment about soul. And I was like, but Jews don't have souls, do you? I'm like, you guys are just here, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, like people you're done. He's like, yeah, pretty much. Which is the difference between, I think, we have in Christianity, there's the afterlife, right?
Right.
So, but I'm not gonna get into a conversation about that. I just thought I think that was really interesting, and what I found accessible, because it doesn't make sense. It's like, okay, how would God have qualities of a flawed human being, if it is the most perfect, the most amazing, the best thing that exists, right? Like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
That God would be a punisher, or God would be a jealous person, or God, my God is jealous, or you will be punished. And those are traits that belong to humans. Like, even dogs don't really punish each other. They're all instinctual.
Right. That's right.
So I'm not great with hierarchies. I understand that in certain processes they're important, especially like with big organizations. But the sake that this is the only way if we're not, you're not an atheist, right?
No, I'm not an atheist.
Neither am I.
Right.
And so I acknowledge that there is definitely, like, I believe in God. And for there to only be one way to get him to acknowledge you seems fucking dumb.
Right.
It goes against the power of what that energy force is capable of doing for us.
Exactly. And that's why this book calls attention, right? Because, you're like, well, okay, a lot of people set the spirituality bucket aside because this is what, at least in our culture, obviously we can't speak for everybody, but in our culture, this is what we're taught. Everything you're talking about, the hierarchy, this image and the human, through our human egos, creating stories that are tailored for certain situations, instead of, making, like, God is punishing when you do this, but he's not punishing in this area, or he'll love you if you do this, or if you. So anyway, we're going to bring this back to ego. It's not about religion, but it's really interesting how the whole thing with this book, the point I was trying to make is, we don't have to set the spirituality bucket aside. A lot of people see spirituality and think religion, think of what you're describing. And this book gives us this alternative, in a way, of how to see things. And Eckhart talks about God, but not in the way that maybe traditionally, when we were growing up, God was spoken about.
I would say that even if you are an atheist and you don't believe in God, right? You're a science person, and that's it. Like, you come onto this planet, you live one existence, the end. Actually, very, very Jewishy. If you even in that space, there's really good lessons that we can learn from this man's teachings. The idea of, like, the self, being able to be present, like understanding how you are not your thoughts, how, the voice within, all of those things. He tells a story about how, I guess, he was at a point in his life very, 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 very upset, like very sad, to the point of considering, of contemplating suicide. And I think he was actually like on the bridge at some point. He was like about to jump or something. Yeah. And he found himself having the thought of, I cannot live with myself anymore. And then, like, I guess this guy's really fucking smart. I don't know what his credentials are. Didn't look him up, but
but definitely
he's smart and analytical, and being able to do an analysis of your own thinking as you're doing it is I guess it's a gift and a curse. But in this case, it ended up being a gift because he was able to identify the fact that he himself was having a thought about himself. Like, how can I not live with myself? How can I have that own thought? Like, he started to see himself separated from his thinking. Like, I am a person, and I also have these thoughts, and they're not always like, I'm not my thoughts.
Exactly. That is to me
Like,
that's the good stuff right there. When he says, when you can separate yourself from the thought and you realize that your thought, that's all it is. And what we got to focus on is on the motivation or the process behind the thought.
well, that's like the
And
programming and the conditioning that has happened over the course of an entire lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But when you're able to have that, when you're able to understand the concept of that, or you start to even ask the question about like, why do I always think this way? Or like, you're questioning your own thinking, and then how it's affecting like your day to day and the way that you feel, the way that you sleep, the way you interact with others. Maybe you're always irritable. Maybe you're always anxious. All those negative kind of feelings, which stem from, having a mind that's being led by like having yourself being led by every little cosita thought that you're having. Yeah, it's so good. So good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's, I mean, there are a couple things that we're built with that are hardwired in as humans, right? The fight or flight response, for example.
Okay.
Extremely, extremely useful. We all should be very grateful for the fight or flight response, right? I mean, because if you are in a, God forbid, in a situation, and you're one of the people who fight, you're going to run away from real danger, but the constant misfire of the fight or flight response is happening now, in modern day society, and things that are perceived danger. So the perception, the thought, right? The perceived danger, the danger associated with the perception of something and choosing how we perceive something, turns into a real danger. So, now the fight response is constantly activated. And that's why people are so stressed and anxious, and again, it's the perception and the way we react, and why these things are important to us is directly related to the ego, which is another aspect of our being that is extremely useful, but we are misusing it more frequently than what it's actually used for, right? The ego protects us, right? But we misuse that all the time, and we let it dictate behavior, we let it dictate decisions, and it creates problems related to greed and to pride, and there's a lot of things there, that being present with the thoughts and learning about the ego really is humbling. Like when he talks about how the flowers, they don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. They don't worry about the past. They know that they're going to be given what they need to still be flowers, and being present with that. Like, I just find all that very fascinating. That's what helped me to like slow my mind down. That's how this book started to help me already in chapter 1, was to, when I laughed the first time he said it, like, be one with, like, stare at a tree, or he said something like, and I'm like, dude, I'm not going to do that. But what's funny, when you actually go and you stare at a tree, and after 5 minutes, it's just you and the tree, and everything else ceases to exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. It's so simple. And yet it's so difficult for so many people to grasp. The idea that if you are always worried about what's going to happen next, or you're always chasing the next best thing, whether it's in your job, or the bonus, or the raise, or the promotion, or the grade, or the next grade, or the cum laude and the honors, and you're never like, there's a lack of it. You create a a template for like a lack of satisfaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, and this is even, I think this is, you see this more when you try to use like purchases, like physical things, like material, there it is. When you try to use material things to gain some sort of satisfaction, you know, initially you'll be happy with the purchase and you'll be like excited about it, but it'll go away very quickly.
Yeah.
Whereas when you have a moment where you haven't bought anything and you haven't maybe really done anything, but you're just still. There's stillness, and the moment, there's nothing in your head, and the moment that you become aware of it, it's over, right? But just before that moment, just before you become aware of like where you're at and what's going on, you are connected to everything around you, and it feels there's like a calm. And I find it when I'm doing very mundane things. Yeah. Like if I'm out, a lot when I'm outside. I love being outside. I like being in the present. Like that's when he tells people to go into nature to see it or to feel it. It's become a very easy way to do it. You know, we have that totem of the squirrel sniffing the sunflower, which is like the
my
perfect
favorite thing in the world.
It's the perfect picture because that's exactly what that is. It's like
that's exactly what we should be doing.
But like, yeah, right. Like that's kind of that's where you can tell that there is like joy and happiness and satisfaction in that little squirrel taking in that lovely scent from that beautiful flower. And I also feel that this could be helpful too for people. Sometimes when you're just spending time with like your animals and you're away from your devices and you're just like you're petting your dog or like your dog is like super happy to see you and you're not thinking about anything else and you're literally there, especially when you come home after like a long day and your dog is so happy to see you, you drop all your things, and maybe you don't always do this, but maybe one day you just like, I'm gonna get on the floor and I'm gonna like I'm gonna let them like lick my face and get all over me, and it's just you and them together in that moment, and there's like anything that happened before that moment is gone, and anything that's about to happen after, it's not there because you're just enjoying that. And if you felt that, you know what that feels, it feels good. And why would you not be able to take, knowing that there's a possibility that you can take that feeling and increase the opportunity to feel it.
Right.
To me, it seems kind of like a no-brainer. Like, yeah, let's do that. Like, yeah, let's do that. I mean, I know it's not all gonna be puppy kisses because, come on, puppy kisses are amazing.
Yeah. They are.
But there's so many moments where you can just feel like yourself connected to the energy around you, and it's not static energy. You know, I think that's great. A lot of times when people are marching in protest and they're chanting and they're united, they're not anywhere else. Maybe their cause is forward thinking, like we want change, right? But when they're in the march and they're walking on the streets and they're chanting their chants, that is like, we are here for this right now. We're not here for anything else. The same way that when we're working out and you find your groove, right? And you're like in that zone and it feels so good. And you're not like, oh, I'm tired. Oh, I need water. What's going to be for dinner? Or like, I find when your brain starts to go to those other places, that's when it starts to hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's, and then what it does, and I've seen this a lot in you, and if you don't agree or if I'm off, you know, obviously.
Ooh, tell me. Hello? Hello? Oh, no. Dude.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Happened?
The last thing I heard you say was, I saw this a lot in you.
Oh, really? Oh, man. Okay.
And I didn't hear anything after that.
Oh, that's a first. Okay. Well, hopefully it'll be smooth sailing moving forward. All right. No, what I see a lot in you is that you're very good at saying, okay, wait, I'm not going to worry about this right now. Like, no, that's not something that I'm going to be thinking about right now. You know, you even caught me last week at the end of the episode where I was like, no, you know, like, enjoy the now, right? Be here. and I took that and ran with it. I had a stressful situation at work, and I realized that I was owning the stress, and I'm like, no, this is something that, no, this is all ego based. Me wanting to resolve this is all ego based. This can wait. It's like when somebody says, I can't take time off of work because, if I take, what are they going to do without me? Like that's crazy. I can't take time off of work. But guess what? You take time off of work and you come back and everyone's like,
welcome back.
We did fine.
Still here.
Right. And you were, not you, but I mean, in general,
Yeah.
a person's on vacation just thinking about, oh my gosh, I hope everything's okay at work, rather than just enjoying their vacation.
Yeah. What a bummer to spend all that money and not being able to enjoy yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So how do we do it? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I know that human behavior is, we tend to fall into the same traps, right? So I read the book, I think probably about a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also read The Power of Now, his other book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all the teachings stuck with me for a pretty long time, and then it wore off. So now everything, like I said at the introduction of today's episode, it took for all these things to occur, everything that's been going on in the world for the last 3 months, to then say, oh my gosh, I'm missing something. I lost my balance. How do I gain that again? And it's like the answer, is like right in front of me the whole time. I was gonna
Where's my cup? I think mine's in my nightstand. Yeah, dude. Yeah.
It's in my nightstand. And it's right there. That's the bitch about human behavior, is that sometimes we know what we need to do for ourselves and we just choose not to, because there's a side of us that secretly enjoys the suffering.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. I don't think it's that much of a secret. I think people love bitching.
Yeah. No. And I'm not saying it's a secret. I'm not saying
it's almost
a
like
secret.
And I find it kind of I wonder if, have you seen this before, where bitching kind of becomes the default conversation between two people? Yes. Like, how's it going? Oh, all thing, and it's fine, I guess, or Monday is like, oh, it's a Monday, don't talk to me before Monday, bro. Right. Tuesday, it's so, like, Monday is chill because it's always Monday, but Tuesday it's like, Wednesday, right. Oh, it's still so far, my body is sore, I have been working out so hard, blah. And then as you get closer to the weekend, I guess it gets better, but that's just because you're just waiting for something fun to happen. And then the weekend comes and you're like, okay, fun, happen. And then it doesn't happen because whatever, you're not there. You're waiting for something and it never comes. And you're like, man, weekend was shitty. I didn't do shit. I'm back to this shitty job and it's Monday again. And
yeah. So, I mean, based on his teachings, where do we start with that?
Look, he starts to break it down in chapter 2 a lot. This is just the overview of the idea of stillness and presence, trying to understand that there is a voice inside of you that dictates a lot, that wants to take you into things, that likes to seek other people who do the same things that we do. If you have, you've been programmed through conditioning and through all of the things that we've gone through in the course of our 40 plus years now, and experiences that have given us kind of a baseline approach of how we're going to how we're going to think the way we think, why we think the way that we think, why we make the decisions that we make, so on and so forth. And you and I have been lucky enough that we have been able to pivot some of those methods of thinking and just to kind of question it and maybe tweak it so that we don't fall into the same traps that we did, that would make us sad, upset, and anxious in the way that we were in like our 20s and 30s, where there was like this feeling of doom and gloom and like existential
Yeah.
dread. Like, remember, like when you first went into the workforce after college, maybe you didn't have this experience, but I'm sure I know I'm not the only one, but it comes to a point where you're like, you're at your job, and maybe it's your first job out of college, and that it was for me. And I just kept thinking, this is fucking it.
I had, yes, I'm with you. I had that. I
This is
had
it.
that
And
moment.
I didn't have the experience of like, okay, now I need to meet a girl and have a family, which is what I grew up in. Now it's like, okay, I have the job. Uh, I guess I gotta get a guy. I guess I gotta find a guy, and maybe I don't. I never wanted to have a family, but it was like, this is it. Like,
Right, 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 right.
you know. And then you look for the guidebook on how to be a happy adult, at 23, and you go to your parents, and your parents just tell you what they fucking did, and it's not gonna. Maybe it worked for some people. It wasn't gonna work for me.
Well, I mean, that's, my experience was very much like that, and it was very disappointing because I thought I wanted a lot of material things. And I started earning money. My first job, obviously no responsibilities. I was like, I was even still living at home. I think there was 2 years before I bought my house. And, I remember like saying, oh, the reason I'm doing this is to earn money to buy whatever I want. And I just bought so much stuff. And that's when I started realizing that wasn't doing anything.
yeah.
That's the first time I realized that material things don't do it for me. Like, when people say mansion, when people say boat, when people say, like, I'm just like, and then it gets very depressing because you're like, well, then what
What the fuck?
what do I do now? I mean, I thought that the idea was that I was going to love having and accumulating more and more and more. And then I'm going to upgrade my house. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to change this. And I'm going to buy that. And I'm going to get a nicer car. And I'm going to, and I'm like, fuck, I don't want any of this. And then there's like multiple depression because it's like, do I lack drive? Do I lack ambition? Is this it? Like, and then finally, thankfully, when my kids came around, then I found my purpose. I earned to support and, like have experiences with them, and everything changed. But between like 23 and 27, that's when I first realized that money and material things, nope. So, which, Eckhart talks about, talks about like materialism and, how, unfulfilling that is,
You said something just right now about finding your purpose, which is literally like the subtitle or the sub. Isn't that the new?
Awakening to your life's purpose.
Yeah. So the way, and it's good because you cannot do that. You cannot find your purpose in life if you are surrounded by noise and distraction and distortion, not only from the outside, but from within your own self.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I struggle with the purpose a lot. And I think it'll ultimately reveal itself to me probably like on my deathbed. Because I don't know, I don't have who was it? Did I talk to this? Did I send this on this? There's people who walk around like, no, this happened with my sister. I was talking about my sister, and I was saying to her how there's people who feel like from the moment that they were born, they knew exactly what they were going to do. This wasn't with my sister. This was with Adri. And just like Adri always wanted to be a firefighter. I guess her father's a firefighter. She knew she wanted to be a firefighter. That's firefighter. That is what I'm going to do. And then of course, like you build you build things on the side, and she's into fitness and so on and so forth. David was the same way. David has always loved animals. And he has like put all of his life's effort and his, everything that he does is in the pursuit of saving and improving the quality of life of animals on Earth. It's like it comes from within. He cannot be anything else, you know.
Right. It's almost like out of his control. Like even if he tried to do something else, it would just
could not. And it must be awesome to have that feeling of like of like an intense like drive towards a thing. Because mine isn't, you know, mine is I don't drive towards things. I kind of like toot along, and I just like asking, like turning over rocks, like what's this rock, what does this look like, okay, put it down, I don't like that one, what's this, oh, this is too heavy, like, and I kind of just acquire experiences. Has been you know, my thing. And so the idea that the title of it, like Awakening Your Inner Purpose, to me drew me in, because it's like, okay, now I will find my inner purpose. And it's like, I still don't fucking know.
Oh yeah, it's very, very difficult.
No.
Yeah. It's very, very hard. I mean, you know, because it seems like I get the impression that you and I had a similar path, in the sense that we knew what we liked to do, but the things we liked to do weren't like as far. And this goes, the whole issue with ego, a lot of it is not only internal, but it gets presented to us from external sources. So, you know, in my story, it's music. So I know that I love music. I know I'm good at music. I know I'm a good singer. I know I'm a good guitar player. But I grew up in a world where it was like, okay, but that's, you know, you're going to starve. So it was like, that's one thing I loved. You know, another thing is like fitness I love. And it's like, so it seems like what we've done is we found a line of work that's a vehicle to enjoy the things that we're into, where some people knew what they wanted to do from day one, and that is like I am doing it, you know what I mean? It's pretty incredible.
And you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, people, I'd like to find more people who are like that, because my guess is that when you're that focused on one singular thing, or you feel like that is your purpose in life, or you decided that this is my thing. I wonder how limited in experiences that leads you. You know, like I don't have time to do anything else. I gotta save all the. I mean, if you're let's say you're a surgeon, you know, or like, I don't know, a nurse, you want to save people. So you like are constantly going into places and like helping people. There's like people who like do travel nursing, and they just go to like places that they need nurses the most, because that's what they're into. You must miss other stuff too, right? Like, I mean, it's, if the goal is balance, you know, to be so singularly minded on one thing, you lose sight.
Yeah. What happens to those people? You know, I'd be curious too. I'd be curious to meet a lot of them. I mean, I know that like there's a lot of studies on how medical school takes so long, that there's a high percentage of people that by the time they become MDs, they don't want to be MDs anymore.
Dude, that's the same thing with law school. Like there's people who finish law school and they just, I mean, I know them personally, that it's like, yeah, I graduated, but I was so far in debt that I had no choice but to like see it through. And now I like it and I do well, blah, blah, blah. But that's kind of crummy, right?
Yeah. What a crisis right there.
I was passionate about experiences.
You are. And I think that's okay.
And I think that's probably why I try so many different, like I've tried so many different like fitness endeavors and stuff.
I mean, we have a podcast, for crying out loud.
I want to have a podcast. I'm passionate about conversation.
Yeah, conversation, connection, interaction.
I am passionate about people. I am passionate about people. And every time every time I turn on like the television these days, which isn't very much, to watch like, the news.
Right.
Um, the stories being told aren't the ones. The stories being told seem to be very, very much very similar, very formulaic. Usually, like
Mm-hmm.
a terrible thing happened to this person,
Mm-hmm.
and here's their family living to tell the victim's story, or the assailant is a horrible human being, and it's just atrocity after atrocity, or terrible news after terrible news. Uh, the virus is spiking. People aren't listening. Everyone is fighting,
Yep.
and I I I do wonder, about the forces at play here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It makes me wonder how. I asked the question like, are people that do nothing but watch this shit all day long? I mean, especially people who haven't like gone anywhere and done anything for 3 months, 4 months. Are they being reprogrammed by these media outlets? 24/7. Corporate media groups and stuff like that. And I know I'm like getting off on a tangent, but it's you. If you're constantly being bombarded with information outside of your own like thinking, it just adds to the noise.
Right. And you're not on a tangent. You're not on a tangent because that is the inability to separate your thought from the thought from yourself. So if you're in a habit of constantly receiving external noise, external sources, and you're not doing anything to interrupt the reactions to the thoughts it's triggering, right? Then you're not being present. You're not being present with yourself. You're not being present with your thoughts. You're choosing, and this is the most, for the people I've worked with that are the most skeptical ones, this is the point that pisses them off, is when I say something like, we were born with the ability to choose how we react to a thought. It's not, this isn't new agey freaking like, oh, like let's, like let's go meditate and everything's going to be fine. It is, we, for the most part, unless you have obviously some kind of disorder and brain,
Yeah.
something going on with the brain, but for the average human being, we have the ability to choose how we react to the thought. But how can you react to the thought if you're not present with the thought? And somebody who's watching the news all day long, they're not present with the thought. They're just taking everything to what's right in front of them and just trigger it. They're just getting triggered and they're not interrupting the reaction.
You know what? I bet this might sound naive, but I really believe that human beings from like the human beings, like all of humanity, has much more in common, much more in common with each other. Like even people that they might have than not. Even people who
Mm-hmm.
are like polar opposites on like the socio-political religio scale. Even
Mm-hmm.
those people, there is more things that bring us together. There's the abundance of the abundance of oh my god, this is going to be such a big concept. But the abundance of the universe to be able to draw humanity together far
Mm-hmm.
exceeds far exceeds the power of division.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of people don't see that because a lot of people
Because
admit
no,
to
because it's
emotions. I mean,
well, yeah, their emotions, their ego, they're always being told, or like, no, I have a list of things that need to be that have to happen. I
right.
am, if I'm a Democrat, I have to vote a Democrat. I have to do this. I have to go this. I have to wear this. I have to say this. I have to do that. To post, diggity, 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 and anything that's not on that may deviate from that script.
Right.
Um, Means that you fall out of the group, and then if you fall out of the group, then you're ostracized, and then all of a sudden your identity, which is based on all of these beliefs that you think you have, which you most likely agree with a lot of it. I mean, I definitely am more of a liberal leaning person, and I agree with a lot more of the Democratic platform than the Republican platform, but I understand why it's very, very hard to be all in on one side. you know?
Yeah.
It's I get why people who hear things like you got to be all in on Biden, and we'll say things like, well, come on, that has to be like the worst. I mean, this is the shittiest election. You know,
Mhm.
Biden's this and Trump is that, and it's like, no, you got to be all in on Biden. And even though I am all in on Biden, I
Mhm.
understand the need to question it,
Right.
and being able to find a space where that's okay. You know, it's definitely not on the internet, so just don't go there for that, guys. It's like,
Well, I
if
mean,
you
well,
want free, if you want, you know, if you want like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know.
but that's the benefit of people. If we can get more people being in touch with us, because you are absolutely right. What are some of the emotions that bring us all together? Fear, right? Fear brings us together. We've all felt sadness at some point. We have all felt angry at some point. We have these core emotions that, yeah, they were triggered by different things, but the emotion itself, we have all experienced collectively at some point in time. You
Yes.
know, if you say I was angry, I can understand what that is. I have been angry before, and that is something that brings people, together. At the end of the day, if you separate the thought, or if you can control your reaction to what's going on, if you take a step back, everyone's reacting with fear, because everyone is fearful that things are going to go a certain way. It's going to affect, humanity. It's going to affect their lives,
Or maybe they're
and
afraid of losing their friends who all are screaming one thing, so they need to like get in on the
there
yelling.
you go. You can, yeah,
So
even at the micro level, right? Like, oh, I don't want my friends to think that I think differently than them.
I mean, we talked about this. Did we talk about this on the podcast? There was the
I'm not
culture,
sure.
the call out culture, the mass, the group thinking, the
Oh, yeah, briefly. I think we
all that
briefly
stuff.
touched on it.
This ties into that.
Yes, it does.
This ties into that, and I, whenever I find myself where I feel like I am with the people yelling the loudest, I will inevitably turn around and be like, wait, what are we yelling about? Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on, hold on, hold on. There's a lot of people yelling. Wait, hold on, hold on, hold
Yeah.
on, hold on, hold on. I mean, it feels good to feel right, but wait, what? Hold on, wait, what,
Oh, wait.
what?
Yeah, yeah. What
Wait,
is
wait,
that
what's
we're
that?
doing
Or
again?
all of a sudden, if the yelling starts to change or they start to add new chants, I'll be like, wait, hold, whoop! I didn't sign up for
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
for
yeah.
that
We
chant.
I didn't rehearse that one.
I
Where'd that
didn't
one come
think,
from?
you know. And so there's the idea that, not the idea, but like everything is. I mean, these things collide. Like all of these ideas, these thoughts, these issues, they are constantly colliding, and they don't always line up nicely and embedded nicely. Um, and if they do, then lucky you,
Right, right.
lucky you. I don't. That has not been my experience. And but this book was super helpful in being able to understand the difference that somebody's thoughts or the thoughts that I have and the life that I live
Mhm.
um, is uh, is just one part of the existence.
Right.
There's like being able to connect into that bigger like energy,
Hmm.
and you feel it. You can feel it. You feel it because you don't feel anything else.
Right.
And that silence, that like there's a hum. There's like I don't know. I start to get goosebumps. Um, is I've it's goals, right? That's kind of where I keep
Yeah.
wanting to go to. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. I was listening. I think that's beautifully said. I mean, yeah, it's the what I'll tell you as we move on in this book. One of the biggest things that it helped me do, and I feel that this is could be my talking, but I feel that I've done a decent job in passing on this information. Is number one is catching myself when my ego's way too involved, because it's inevitable. It's just gonna happen. No one's perfect. When I started CrossFit, I don't know if you had the same experience, but I had to go all in. I wanted to learn everything overnight, and I never stopped to think, why do you feel this way? Why is that so important? Why can't you just take your time? Well, if I can go back in time and I go to that version of Carlos from back then, and he answered honestly, it would be, I just want to take the fast track to fit in and be part of this culture. because I need acceptance, right? Or I need, I want this, I need this, and why? I don't know, right? And and which is a lot of people will, you'll catch, you start asking like, if there's a weight that you shouldn't have lifted, but your ego said you can do it. And somebody says, why did you do that? Who are you trying to impress? What are you trying to do? What statement are you trying to make? Right. And when you're able to catch that within yourself, then you can catch it on other people sometimes. And that's egotistical to begin with, but it's also helpful, if, you could see that somebody's, doing something more for their own ego than for the actual matter at hand.
A lot of times those people don't even know they're doing it like that because they're so
Right.
completely out of touch with what's going on that they're just reacting to emotional responses. And that's just,
Right.
and and I think it's important to say this, anyone who's listening to this for the first time with these concepts, it is, trust, you are in the majority. Like, trust, most people are completely living an unconscious life. Like, they have no
Yep.
clue that they are not their thoughts.
Yep.
They're not.
That's right.
Or people will say things like, I just can't help it. I think the way that I think, and that's it. That's it. Or people who are, I feel like I remember my grandmother, rest in peace, used to say this. She's like, I'm just too old to think any other way. This is who I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you're not your thoughts. You're not.
Right.
You're not. You can choose a life without that if you don't want.
Right.
And especially if it's not working for you, like, hey, listen, if you're listening to this and you're like, my life is fucking great, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, I'm gonna tune out for the next 10 weeks, then alabao, good for you.
Yeah.
But odds are I probably know you and I've talked to you and you should stick around.
Yeah. You should do yourself a favor. Just, at least
Um,
wait till like episode 2 or 3 to like make a decision, at least, at a minimum. And yeah, I mean, I think so. The being present is something that a lot of people struggle with, and a lot of people don't understand it. And it's really difficult because I've struggled with it. This is something that I struggle with up until a week ago when this came up. I was not being conscious. I was not being present. Everything I learned from the first time I read this book did not exist. So
it happens all the
it's
time.
just
It
it's an
literally happens.
ongoing practice.
Always. It'll stop when we die.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And you got to get okay with that concept, I think.
the time on Earth is limited. We've already been
Yeah.
around the moon, half of our lives typically. Because
Yeah.
listen, and I just want to amend what I said once before. I don't think I need this to be 150 anymore.
No.
No, dude.
No.
I'm clocking out. Like,
You're clocking out.
I'm just
Clocking
like,
out when?
no. I don't know. I don't like if I'm a person that starts to like you start to see patterns. Like,
Yeah.
and let me just say, I'll just say this. I used to have a very like uptrending forecast for, and I don't know. There's a downtrend right now that I don't know. I'm not too confident in circling the globe, for another 90 years. No,
No,
more.
I'm not.
Fuck, 110 years.
I am not interested in that at all.
Yeah, even in an
Yeah.
Airstream, no. I just, what's really
Oh,
funny about
no.
there's an Airstream park like 2 blocks away from our house right now.
Really?
Yeah, really. It's really cool. I saw it walking the dogs today. I thought of you. I should take a picture.
Where? You can tell me later on. Tell me where it is.
I won't. I honestly will not remember where, but it's
Okay.
like on one of these blocks over here.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, no, I want to make sure that my kids are all right. And once I know they're okay, and maybe like a small list of experiences that I want for myself, then, you could, take me whenever you want. I'm good.
There have been moments after a very, 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 very intense, grueling CrossFit workout where my BPM, no, my heart rate has been very, very, very high. And I'm lying on the floor and I'm like dizzy, maybe a little nauseous, and I just think, take me now.
Yeah.
Right now. If I just clock out right now, like we're good. Like I'm fine. This is a great way to no. And then the thing is, I think it's really important that we talk about this for a second too. Like you cannot I know people who are scared of death, and it is hard for me to watch them go through that.
Yeah, it's tough.
Because I don't share that. And I am a lot of times criticized for being cold, or that's just the way that you were raised. Your mother's cold, so you're cold. You guys are all cold. You don't know what it's like to have a loving, caring family.
Right. And that is not it at all.
And that will trigger my fucking ass real quick. But
Sure.
It's not the case. It's not the case at all. I know love. I know what that feels like. I feel it in the moment. I feel it when I'm in the presence of people who I am and that I love. I feel it when I'm with David. I feel it when I'm with my dogs. I feel it like when I see the feeling that you have about somebody when you first see them, that tells you all you need to know about how you feel about them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So if I see you and inside, my heart starts to sing, there's love there. That to me is what that feels like. Yeah. And when that person leaves or they die, I don't know, the pain hurts a lot, but to me there is a direct correlation in the amount of love you have and the amount of pain and the loss. And so I just see it as of course you're in pain. You love them so fucking much. And to avoid the pain, or to be fearful of that pain because it's too overwhelming, or it hurts too much, or it's too hard, would be to want to detract from or take away from a loving experience with somebody. It's why would you want to do that? Why limit the love you have because you're scared of the pain of the loss?
Right. Yeah. And all of that revolves around the ego too.
That's the fear.
That's our way of protecting ourselves.
Yeah, that's that fear thing that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I struggled a lot with mortality. I still struggle with aging issues. So aging and mortality for many years was a very sensitive subject to me. And I'm not saying this just because this is the topic for today, but this book helped me a lot with that. A lot of my fear of death was so ego based. It's so much of, I just want to be around. I don't want to be missed. I don't want, people to suffer because I'm gone. And it's like, man, everyone's gonna be all right.
I mean, the likelihood
life keeps going.
Yeah, and the people who will remember us are gonna be younger than us. So
yeah.
That we think of the people who died there older than us.
Exactly.
There's always a way to frame it, so it's better to understand. But yeah, dude, you gotta get go with dying.
Yeah, because your perception of something will determine how you act toward it. So, the quicker that you get okay with your perception of aging and mortality, then the way you approach life, the way you show up for yourself, for your loved ones, it changes. It changes everything, because if not, you're living in fear, right? And that is not the ideal way to go about living.
No.
It's not.
No, sir.
No.
No, sir. No, I don't want to be scared of what people think about me on Instagram. I don't want to be scared about what my mom thinks about my soul and its everlasting eternity. I don't want to be scared about about my job. I don't. There's inevitable. I guess there's inevitable level. Do you think that? Okay, here's a question. Do you think there is a quote healthy level of fear to have?
Well, yes, the one that's needed to run away from real danger. Yes.
So then how do you reconcile people who like run toward the bullet? I mean,
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's a great question. Um, you know, well, if we talk about, the fight or flight response, the way we fight changes for everybody. I mean, yeah, some people just, hey man, here we go. Like, I always think about, oh, it's like I get goosebumps just thinking about it. I always think about the phone call when one of the planes, 9/11, calls his wife, and he just, he says, hey, we're gonna take these guys down. It was in the United flight, I think,
yeah.
and he says, hey, we're gonna take these guys down. I just want to tell you that, if I don't make it, I love you very much. Da da da. And right when he hangs up, like right when he says bye, you catch him saying, all right, let's roll, boys. And like, there are people that I don't know. I've never, knock on wood, I've never been in a situation like that. And that's the bitch of it, is that you don't know. You can't say, oh, for sure I would fight. Like, oh, you don't know until there are huge guys that can probably protect themselves, that probably know how to use a gun, and all of a sudden it's fight or flight, and they just go
Yeah.
freeze. You don't know until you are there in the moment. So I don't know. I can't reconcile that, because it's just.
You cut out again.
Oh, I did. What was the last thing you heard?
You can't reconcile that because it's just.
Oh yeah, you can't because it's on a case by case
Okay,
basis.
got it.
Yeah, you can't reconcile that because but it is fascinating though. It is fascinating, and that healthy layer of fear. Yeah, I mean, the healthy layer of fear. The only justifiable layer of fear is the one where you're running away from real danger. And I think that's what's causing, like I said before, the
Sure, I mean
misfire of the fight or flight response.
and that's instinctual. Like you see that in nature, it's like the
Yeah,
gazelle running away from the lion, not trying to get eaten, or
right.
swerving in traffic when like a car like it gets into your lane.
Yeah.
It's innate. You don't think about it; you just do it.
Well, and the body just takes over. I mean, I remember back in the day when we used to write checks. I remember bouncing a check one time, and when I found out that the check bounced, my body, not, logically, I'm like, okay, not a problem, it's okay. But I remember my body, yeah, my body was like, I'm gonna die. My body entered that mode, and that's not a real danger. I mean, there's a perceived danger because there's like, okay, I need to solve this now, or I need to go pay them, or maybe this caused other things to overdraft, and like, yeah, there's like, but I'm not gonna die from it, and
No.
but the body misfires that, and the body treats it like, oh my God, it's the end of the world,
I mean, it sounds
and
like
that's.
also when have you ever been the victim of an embarrassing moment? Maybe not at someone else's hands. Maybe it was just an accident. Maybe you fell in a
Oh yeah, I've tripped and fallen
down.
on stage multiple times. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. There was always moments where I felt like if I did something that was humorous and someone laughed at me, I was, you know, it was a catastrophe.
Yeah. Yeah. And your body probably entered that mode
Tears,
totally. Like, yeah.
total tears, sadness, rage, anger.
Yeah.
Like they're all gonna laugh at you. That all of that.
Right. Right. They're all gonna laugh at you.
They're all gonna laugh at you. They're all gonna laugh at you.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so much of that is so ego driven. It's all about, what are they gonna think of me? How am I gonna be looked at? What's my identity in this world? You know,
That's
it's
you. Those are the thoughts that I remember the most is always thinking about what other people are thinking about me.
sure. And but that's growing up. That's just so much of it is so much of it is biological too, like in
Yeah,
our
but
brain development.
were you raised by somebody who was like, you have to act a certain kind of way because you are a member of this family, and we don't want
Oh
people being embarrassed of you. Like, don't embarrass me. Don't. I'm
Yep.
ashamed of you, stuff like that. Those are that to me is the trigger word. Like those are the, I don't know what it is. Like that's the nurture that you get that I think that not inspires, but that causes
Yeah, it
those,
influences that. Yeah.
that frame of thinking. And that's what I was able to like, that's the part that for me I had to start to untangle. You know, like no one fucking cares.
Right.
No one cares. There's a really, do you watch the television show Schitt's Creek?
I'm like on episode like 5 of the first season.
There's a wonderful scene between the brother and the sister, David and Alexis, and he's off to get his driver's license. And he's like, what happens if I don't do this and if I don't do that? And Alexis says, David, no one really cares. Like, nobody cares. It's not a big deal. Relax.
Yeah.
Who cares if you fail? Who cares? You take it again. You do it again. And he has that realization while he's taking the test that the person doesn't care about him. It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. In other words, like the drama of it is worse. It's almost like, similar to when you know you have a task you have to do, and so you procrastinate.
Yeah.
And the task becomes bigger
In your head.
than what it actually is. And
right.
then the lift of that is like even worse, you know? And like you start to, like, maybe you miss deadlines and you tell people like, oh, I'm super busy, but you haven't done it. And you're just like, all you
right.
is create a nightmare for yourself by just not going in and doing it.
Right. Yeah. And that's all, like, we just psych ourselves out. And the fear that's associated with not following through with that is what's very telling, but it's the one thing a lot of us don't face. We don't want to admit why we fear stuff or why we fear situations, because it makes us vulnerable. You know, that's why transparency is such a beautiful thing. You were talking earlier, you brought up an excellent point about how some things are just going to bring through, like mutual emotions and experiences bring people together, right? And that's why people who are transparent and are able to apply a certain sense of humor to themselves, to poke fun at themselves, but not self-deprecating way, but to be transparent, they become lovable almost immediately. You know, like, you know, you say something that's relatable, you know, you say something that you're not socially not expected to say, but it's so true, and everyone goes through it, that the fact that you're the one who said it out loud and made it okay to talk about makes you innovative in a way. It makes you lovable. It makes you, you know, because, you know, we have that fear of what are people going to think of me, and then when you realize, like, who cares, you know, like, who cares?
Something this book like was really helpful for me was to quiet the mind. That's super important for me, especially when there's chaos around me. And we've been living in fucking chaos so much these last 4 months. And it's been beneficial to be able to rely on, you know, like being able to go outside and do all those things. But what I was going to say was that when it comes to understanding the ego, it's like everything, right? Like there's got to be a willingness, you know? And I guess now I'm talking to the people who just like maybe still don't get it, or think it's a bunch of hogwash, or feel like they don't have time for it. Like I don't have time for that. How do you answer that?
How do you answer? I mean, specifically, I mean, how do you answer? You know, the person that's like what?
Like, I don't know, like you got to have a friend or a loved one who talks to you and it's really and they finish their spiel, and you realize it's not a conversation, it's just them wanting to vent, but they vent, and all they do is vent, and there's
And they don't take
never,
action.
not even about action, because they're always in action. They're all, I bet you if you were to if you were to ask them about like what action should you take, they will spit off a laundry list of things that they have been doing to, like, I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this, and it never seems to slow down for them because they're constantly in that, like, in that hamster wheel of, you know, receiving a trigger, acting to the trigger, you know, responding to it. Oh, receiving another trigger.
And not doing anything to interrupt to put something between the trigger and the reaction.
Or maybe even like wondering, like, wait a second, why I've been here before? Like, you've been here before. You did. I know that I've had thoughts where I thought to myself, this, it happens less often, but I'm just like, fuck, I made the same mistake again. Like, here's an opportunity I had to like react in a different way, but I, you know, like, God damn it. And you have to like double back and like go backwards and be like, okay, wait, oh, sorry. Oh, damn it.
Yeah. I mean, but look, I think that a person needs to reach a point where they just get exhausted. I think a person needs to and that's why it's very tough. Although I have, you know, even in the podcast with Oprah, there was a young girl, like a grade school girl, that called in and asked a question. I don't know if you remember that in one of the episodes, but for the most part, you know, it's not until we're older that we actually say, all right, you know what, I've had enough of feeling a certain way, you know, and then we take action. But until then, it's like, in 1 year I'm going to be great at venting, but I'm not going to be receptive to any possible solutions. And
listen, and right now we're only on chapter 1.
Right. No, and like, so, you know, we're definitely, that's why I'm looking forward to next week, because that's when we start getting into, you know, what is the voice in the head? What is the concept of actual real self-talk, right? The illusion of what the self is, and the structure of the ego, and, you know, all that. Like, well, you know, I'm looking forward to getting into that next week. So, but this was definitely a good overview of the book. Definitely I think we did a good job with, you know, kind of touching on what chapter 1 talks about, what we're getting ourselves into for the next 9 chapters. So I hope you guys stick around with us, because it's good. It's a lot of good shit.
It's so good. It's definitely, yeah. It's been the one book that I've read that has had the biggest impact in like shaping my adult life.
Yeah.
Which I feel like just started.
It did. For the both of us, I feel. Yeah. I mean, there's aspects of our lives that we've been adulting, but as far as internal work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I'm excited to go through you specifically. So, you know, I mean, I'm excited for people who are going to join us and listen, but, you know, definitely excited for you and I, because we've talked about it, but we haven't gone through it together. So I'm really, really pumped about that.
Same.
So, all right. George, where can they find our podcast?
You can find our podcast anywhere where podcasts are made available for listening.
Yay!
It is that simple.
Simple. And we have a website, www. People say www. They still say that or no? MOACAmedia.com.
Yes.
And our Instagram handle is @MOACAmedia.
Yes.
George?
I am @George I. Sanchez.
I am @Carlos Escanilla, or for my music stuff, @Carlos305 Music. And we look forward to delivering more of this beautiful, beautiful content next week, as we get into the structure of the ego and the identifying of self and all that. So
can't wait.
Yep. All right.
See you later, Carlos.
All right. See you
Bye.
later. Bye. Bye.
I don't know.